I'm looking at this whole Confederate flag thing, and it's the clearest case of selective outrage I ever saw in my entire life. When I look at this whole Confederate flag issue, now I am, sad about the loss of all those lives, but I look at the reaction that many of these Afro American Negroes are having regarding this situation, and it shows me how shallow and dysfunctional many of them are. I mean, you're getting upset over a flag that has been flying over these two states ever since Trayvon Martin was killed, Oscar Grant was killed, Eric Garner was choked out, Michael Brown was killed, and many more, such as your Freddie Gray. But weren't upset then, but now you're upset. And it shows me, clearly how much selective outrage people have. And they're outraged, to the point where they literally protested to get the Dukes of Hazzard taken off of television. And what's so, insane about this is I was watching Antenna TV on last Thursday, and I'm watching All in the Family, and they're showing an episode of Archie's friends in blackface, and Archie Bunker pondering whether or not he wants to put on blackface and participate in a minstrel show in a lodge. Think about that. You protested the removal of the American flag, yet and then protested them taking the Dukes of Hazzard off one classic TV channel because it had a Confederate flag on its car. Yet another classic TV channel runs a episode of All in the Family where the main character is pondering whether or not he wants to wear blackface, and other characters are wearing blackface. And again, no protest, no anger, no Al Sharpton, no nothing. But you are upset over this Confederate flag, but these other racist images, such as this blackface, not a word said. Because again, the reason why Negro is upset is because it's the end thing to do, it's the trendy thing to do, and it's the cool thing to do. He had no outrage over this flag for years when all of these other incidents were happening. When this incident happens, now he's upset about a flag. And again, it shows how shallow he is because it doesn't even that flag really does not even touch, the heart of the issue regarding, race and race relations. Yes, it's a symbol of hate to some, but we're not really scratching the surface. We've got bigger issues, to take care of in our own community than dealing with this flag. And the whole thing is that you're attacking that one symbol and you're trying to get rid of that, yet other symbols pass you right by. And I can also talk about other TV networks, such as Movies here in New York, which still run minstrel movies and movies featuring minstrels, such as your Charlie Chan movies. Many of your other classic movies will feature maids and butlers and other assorted coons, because I'm at home now and I sit there and I watch these movies and I can see the coons and the minstrels on this movies channel, which is owned by Fox. And I can also see it on Sony's Get TV, which also runs classic movies which feature your coons and your minstrels. But again, no outrage from your Negro community regarding these two movie channels, which are public channels and are public sub channels, and you can watch them if you have any, digital television right in your home. And no outrage, no anger, no protests, just we're just silence, just utter and complete silence. Not a single word, said about this. And the flip side of all of this hypocrisy, regarding this Negro and his outrage over this Confederate flag is he himself will participate and support these minstrel shows that are going on right now, and then will try to defend and justify it. These same Negroes who are protesting this Confederate flag and TV shows like the Dukes of Hazzard will be the same ones to tell you that when a movie like Monsters Ball or Precious or Your Selma comes out, we need these films in order to teach history. Which side is it that you want to be on? And you see how, hypocritical this Negro is, and how he has outrage over, this flag, but he doesn't have outrage over other images that are out here that degrade him, and he has no protest over them. And it shows you, how shallow this Negro is, regarding the issue of race and race relations. I mean, he is just so shallow. I mean, it's sad that all those people lost their lives to this dysfunctional psychopath, Dylan Roof, but the response from the Negro, shows how out of this world he actually is, regarding this situation. You want to protest a flag, but you don't, but you let all this other stuff go by. I mean, if you have an issue with, negative images in media regarding the African American Negro, you should have an issue with all of the images in media regarding the African American Negro. Now, I have an issue with Dukes of Hazzard and that Confederate flag a long time ago. I have issues with all those, minstrel shows, but you can't say that you want this gone and then you allow something else gone. And again, it just shows you, how inconsistent your Negro is regarding, these issues. He protests one thing and then he lets everything else go by. It's just like when I was reading in the Bible, with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they strain at a gnat, but they swallow a camel. And this is a clear example of a Negro, straining a gnat and swallowing the camel. He's straining the gnat and then looking at this Confederate flag and saying, I want this taken down, but all these other minstrel shows that he's allowing, he's not protesting. He doesn't have a single word to say, about all these other classic TV shows like Your All in the Families, and other shows which feature, racist images. And then he'll sit there and say, all these other black movies created by black people, like your 12 Years a Slave, your Precious, your Monsters Ball, most of your Tyler Perry movies. He'll sit there and tell you, oh, that's okay. We need movies like this to teach people about, racism and black history. But this over here, you want to get rid of. Again, it's totally contradictory and it's totally hypocritical. You can't say you want one thing and then do another, and you can't say you want one thing and then go get something else. I mean, either you want all the racist images removed, or you want none of, or you're going to leave them all up there. I believe, we really do need to have these images up there so that people can see what they are, and you can choose, what they want, because this is a part of what America is. We may not like these images, we may not, approve of these images, but they have to be there for a reason if we're going to have something we call free speech. In order for us to have that First Amendment and freedom of expression, the racist has to be able to express themselves the same way the homosexual is able to express themselves, and the same way the Negro is allowed to express themselves. That's all part of the First Amendment. Free speech, freedom of expression. Now, we don't like hate speech, and I don't like it. And in media, we would call it obscene, and you could have it removed, but if it didn't meet community standards. But, I look at the African American community, and it's like their outrage is just clearly selective here. I mean, all these other forms of things have been going on for literally 15 years, in media, especially when it comes to that Dukes of Hazzard show, and you want to have it pulled now. The show has been out for 30 years, and this image has been put in even in a remade Dukes of Hazzard movie way back in the early 90s or the early 2000s. I can't remember. And again, no outrage from the Negro then, but now you have outrage now. And it shows, how backwards this Negro is. He allows all of this negative imagery to go on for 15, 16, 17 years. The degradation of his own image. But now he wants to protest. Again, it just shows how backwards he is. And literally, some of them even participated in these movies, and then they call it a teachable moment, historically teachable. But now they're outraged. How can you be outraged when you said this is one thing and then it's something else? It just shows, how this Negro flip-flops. And this is a clear example, again, selective outrage and flip-flopping, because you said that we needed this to teach and it would teach people, but now you want to get these images removed in the wake of this horrible tragedy. But which one is it? Which one is it? What do you want? You can't say you want one thing and then want something else a minute later. That's just flip-flopping. It's not consistent. And I just look at this position, this Negro has regarding this Confederate flag, and it's a clear sign, of that selective outrage. You were mad about this, but, a couple months later, you were also upset, because Selma got snubbed at the Oscars, and you called that movie, a movie with teachable moments, and then other movies like 12 Years a Slave, which you called films with teachable moments. People said back then, that, we get tired of putting these films out, but then here you are complaining about other things. It's like nothing is consistent with you. You talk about, this Confederate flag is a negative symbol, but I can point to numerous other negative symbols that promote hate, and even ones that promote self-hate, like Your Empire. That's a show that promotes self-hate, but yet that's #1 show in African American homes. And you look at these backwards thinking Negroes. They sit there, they get outraged over something, not because they're truly outraged about it. They're not truly outraged, about these situations. They only get upset because, again, it's trendy, it's hip, it's in the news, and if there wasn't a news camera there, they wouldn't be outraged at all. I mean, case in point, when I talked about people getting upset unless they get the Dukes of Hazzard pulled off a classic channel, yet this episode of All in the Family with Archie Bunker and Blackface, which aired this Thursday, pretty much nobody had a word to say about it. Not a single protest, not a single word about Al Sharpton, no NAACP, no Nation of Islam. Not a single one of these Negroes came out to protest, the airing of this episode of All in the Family, where Archie Bunker's friends were in blackface, and he was pondering whether or not if he wanted to put on this blackface. And you get upset over a flag, but the blackface is okay. The coons are okay. The minstrels are okay. And these films pretty much run, every week on these other two channels that I talked about, Movies and Get TV. And they're considered classic films because I've seen, Charlie Chan's on Fox's Movies channel, and I've seen a coon, literally seen coons on that channel almost, every day, when they run a black and white classic movie from the 30s or the 40s. And on Get TV, I will, a coon or a maid will pop up. And Negro won't have a single word to say about any of those images at all. He just gives them all a pass. Again, straining at the gnat, but swallowing the camel. And I'm not defending this Confederate flag. Yes, I say it's a racist symbol, but this is part of people. This is part of American history. It's a part of things, and there are proper channels if you want to get this flag removed off a state capital. You get a referendum done. You get a proposal done. And the whole marching and protesting game is pretty much obsolete. Nobody does this anymore. But your Negro sits there and he still continues to believe that he can, march and protest, shuck and jive, and then blame and shame people into doing what he needs to, doing what he wants them to do. And this isn't going to work. We have to work within proper channels. If you wanted to get this flag taken down, you put a proposal on the ballot, go to your local congressman, put a proposal on the ballot if you live in these states, and get a referendum, and that's how you get it taken down. And that's the solution that Negro, but the Negro don't want to do no work because your Negro is shallow. Just like I stated before, he's a shallow person, and he does what's trendy and cool. And in 6 months, he won't even be thinking about this Confederate flag. He'll find some other issue to get outraged about, just like he got outraged over the Selma snub about 6 months ago. And you tell the Negro, you need to start making better films. The Negro pretty much walked away from that platform and said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep making the same old films following the same old liberal narrative of victimization. I'm not going to try to, learn a craft and tell some decent stories. He's not going to do that type of work, and he's not going to do any type of work, to bring about constructive social change. This is why your Negro, this is all he got from Barack Obama in the wake of all this tragedy. All he got was a song, and he couldn't even see how he was being insulted by his own black president, because your own black president, at the end of the day, he could have really prevented all this, but him and his black attorney general did nothing about George Zimmerman and Darren Wilson, which clearly showed us all how much Black Lives Matter to both of them. Neither one of them truly cared about Black lives, because if they cared about Black lives, if they had did something about George Zimmerman back then, maybe Dylan Roof wouldn't have gone out and killed all these people. And even sadder thing was, most of those Negro people in that community could have also did something about Dylan Roof as well. They could have, they heard this boy plotting murders. His own black best friend heard this guy talking about this stuff, and he did nothing. And it shows you, all these black people, they all had a hand in this, and they didn't want to take any responsibility, to prevent anything. It's like, you look at them and you go, you could have prevented this. And then you look at the aftermath, and you look at the shallowness of this selective outrage regarding the whole incident, and it's embarrassing. You're upset over a flag, but you're not upset over all these other forms of media. You're not upset, about all the other things that people do. You're not upset, you know, regarding, your president not doing anything. You just give him a pass. I mean, this man had an opportunity to actually do something about George Zimmerman. Him and your attorney general, who chickened out at the last minute, talking about he's resigning, and then thought he was going to, hand the bag over to Loretta Lynch and let her be the fall girl. You're not outraged over that. You don't look at, all the stuff that went on behind the scenes regarding this whole incident and the things that led up to it. All you looking at is, Confederate flags and white boys, but you're not looking at the black people who behind the scenes could have done something, about this situation. Because if this boy says Trayvon Martin's murder and the indictment of George Zimmerman was what inspired him, then why? What the problem is, we need to look at our president and our attorney general, who had every opportunity to have done something about George Zimmerman, and even that prosecutor in Florida who could have done something about it. And we can look at them and say, look, this was preventable, but because you didn't do anything, this is what happened. And you know what? Our big problem is we go after superficial and shallow things. A flag that's been flying over these states for decades, but we don't want to go after, the black people who messed up on a job. We just keep giving them passes instead of holding them accountable for their part in these things. Because Barack Obama and his attorney general need to be held accountable, for a lot of what they did. I mean, this man literally, pimp smacked the black community by giving them a song instead of, doing what he needed to do to make a statement about Black Lives Mattering. He could have made, a powerful statement by his attorney general, Eric Holder, indicting George Zimmerman. Maybe even if they had lost, they still would have made enough of a statement to make these other, white supremacists back up. Because if they had seen, this guy getting federal charges, maybe they would have backed up and said, hey, we need to, think about this. It's crazy to me, but it might have had some sort of impact, and it might have saved some lives, and it might have stopped people from feeling inspired and active. But we look at, your black president. This is the precedent he set, and I said this in a video before, but this is the precedent he set, and it pretty much made a condemning statement, regarding race relations in America. He pretty much said, here we have your black president, the top black person in America, making the statement that black lives don't matter to him. Here we have your black attorney general, the most powerful prosecutor in the United States, making the statement that black lives don't matter to him. But your Negro, this just goes over his head. He just doesn't figure it out, that he's been slapped in the face by his own president and his own attorney general. And, he's sitting here marching and protesting over a flag when this is not the process to get, this flag taken down off these states. You have to get legislation passed in order to get that done, and that's up to those people in those states to get that taken down. And when you look at, people protesting and then they fight to get the Dukes of Hazzard taken off the air, yet all these other images are on the air, and yet there is no outrage. Again, it just shows you how this Negro, strains at a gnat but still swallows a camel and lets a whole bunch of other stuff passing by. And then he expects people to take him seriously when he comes to protest, because it shows, a clear defining example of his selective outrage. He's outraged over this Confederate flag and the Dukes of Hazzard, yet he's not outraged over black people continuing to produce minstrel shows like Empire or, Precious or Monsters Ball or Tyler Perry movies. And it's not, and it shows how inconsistent, this Negro is, regarding his image, regarding race, and regarding his own community. Everything he does is just inconsistent, or in some cases even backwards. And this is, again, it's a clear case of selective outrage. So all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.